Hi, everyone. My name is Julian Ashby, and this is Reading with Heathens podcast. As many of you know, I am author of Heathens on all other forms of social media, and I also go by JD Yanez as my pen name. It's a little nod to my mother there with her maiden name. That's where I highlight all my writing journey and my so-called claim to fame, or hopefully I'll one day be announcing a publication of a paranormal horror that I'm working on. But here, I'd like to take a moment and talk about YA or young adult. I have a soft spot for YA. I have tons of it on my shelf. It's one of my favorite genres to read, and it's a genre that I feel is one of the most important on the market. It's one of the most important to keep on your shelf. Anyways, today we're going to talk about diversity, representation, and the windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors comparison when it comes to literature, but more specifically in YA literature or young adult. So I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. I'll talk about that a little bit to give some context and background. In From Reading is Fundamental, there's a chapter titled Perspectives, Choosing and Using Books for the Classroom. And the quote goes like this. It says, "Books are sometimes windows, offering views of worlds that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. And these windows are also sliding glass doors, and readers have only to walk through an imagination to become part of whatever world has been created or recreated by the author. When lighting conditions are just right, however, a window can also be a mirror. Literature transforms human experience and reflects it back to us." End quote. This, in essence, is the ability to walk alongside characters and be in the story with them, right? That's one way of seeing part of it. But it's sort of multi-purpose, because the mirror in this analogy serves to reflect ourselves, and that's hugely important, especially in YAL. Young adults are just learning to be in society, learning how to sort of navigate the world around them independently, and I think it can be hugely helpful to read stories where other young adults are going and reading about these tough and adult things as well, and seeing how others may have or may not have navigated that in life. I heard a quote recently that struck a chord with me. It's from a Q&A done with Professor James Blasingame, and I hope I'm saying that right. Professor Sybil Duran at Arizona State University, where they discuss issues during National Banned Books Week. And Blasingame said there, quote, "If we're preparing our young people to be adults, then they're ready to read about adult subjects." And, banned books is a whole different subject, and we can talk about that another time. But what I love about that quote is it's sort of lending to, I guess, autonomy of the young adult themselves. Sometimes these young people are going through very, very adult things, and it's easy to get boxed into our own little perfect worlds and forget how truly dark and horrific life can be for young people, even as young as 12, 13 years old. I myself had a rough childhood, and I gravitated towards books at that age. Books like Crank and Glass by Ellen Hopkins, where these dark subjects were being talked about. They reflected what my life looked like. This was a mirror for me. So they were truly life-saving because it showed me that there were people out there going through the same things, and I was not alone. I mean, if people are writing books about these things, these terrible, awful things, and I'm going through, then I must not be the only one. So by reading books like Crank, also some other books I've read, like Patron Saints of Nothing by Randy Verbay is also a good one. I've read along with Briar Girls with LGBTQ rep, and I was able to use the mirror in this analogy and see myself reflected in at least one of those stories, and see other people and those that I didn't. Um, During author Chimamanda Adichie's TED Talk titled "The Danger of the Single Story," she talks about growing up reading books where none of the characters looked, spoke, dressed, or ate foods like her. She says, although of course they stirred her imagination and she loves them, the unintended consequence was that I did not know that people like me could even exist in literature. we see the mirror for her, but when we read books written by Chimamanda Adichie, windows and the sliding glass doors are what comes into play. So we're able to use those devices, the door and all that, to see into a world that would not otherwise belong to us. And I think that is something that is wildly important in a society full of discord, I would say, especially reading literature where you see others who do not look like you, because it brings about empathy and understanding, right? DJ needed to see herself. But for those who look like the characters in those childhood stories that she read, they are the ones who need to see her in books as well. So to understand different lifestyles, different perspectives, it can also help to ease or even erase prejudices or biases that may have been, by seeing someone else's side of the story. And that may be the ultimate reward in having great diversity among YA literature. So that is my little spiel on windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors and YA literature and the importance of diversity for both seeing characters who do look like you and reading about those who don't. So diversity is of the utmost importance, especially in YA. Again, like I said before, this is the time where they learn their place in life, and literature can make or break that with how they see themselves and how they see others. Next month, we tackle banned books in YA and the conversation surrounding what topics are too much for YA and sort of how that gets decided. So this is Julian Ashby with Reading with Heathens. See you guys next month.